The room smelled faintly of burnt coffee and carpet cleaner. It always did. Ardent Global Consulting liked to rent the most expensive meeting spaces in the city, but somehow they never noticed the little things. The stain on the carpet just inside the door, the crooked blinds, the fluorescent lights that buzzed like a nervous insect. I noticed, though. I always noticed. That morning, I sat in the corner chair, the same one I had claimed unconsciously for years. I hated how predictable that made me, but I hated the alternative even more. Sitting in the middle where Elliot could call on me at any second, his pale eyes pinning me like a bug in a jar. The chairs were too sleek to be comfortable. Chrome legs, white leather stretched tight. They looked good in photos, which was the point. At Ardent, appearances were everything. Substance was optional. I had known what was coming the moment Elliot walked in with that folder. He always carried a folder for these meetings. Not because he needed it, because it gave him something to hold, something to tap against the table while pretending he had a script. 12 times I had watched that same ritual. 12 times the folder carried news that someone else's name was highlighted in yellow. This time I told myself not to hope. I had made that mistake before. Still, my chest tightened when he cleared his throat. "We're thrilled to announce our new senior consultant," he began. I felt the words before I heard the name. My stomach clenched, a cold weight sinking deep. "Let's all congratulate Nathaniel Harper." The applause came instantly, too loud for the size of the room. Palms slapping, forced laughter, chairs scraping as people leaned forward to shake his hand. Nathaniel stood, beaming, his tailored suit crisp, his tie in a shade of blue that probably cost half my paycheck. 10 months. That was how long Nathaniel had been at Ardent. He had spent more time perfecting his golf swing than learning the systems I built from scratch. But here he was, basking in the glow of a title I had carried in my bones for years. I didn't clap. My hand stayed flat on the table, fingers laced so tightly my knuckles turned white. My pulse hammered in my ears, each beat a countdown. Elliot's gaze landed on me. He smiled, that thin smile he practiced in mirrors. "Brielle, we appreciate your contributions too. Your time will come." My throat burned. I had heard those exact words before, almost word for word, like a broken record. I should have nodded politely. That's what I always did. But this time, something inside me twisted. I laughed. It slipped out before I could stop it. Sharp, jagged, ugly, not the kind of laugh people like to hear in a meeting. Heads turned. Nathaniel froze mid-handshake. Someone coughed nervously. Elliot's expression cracked for a split second, the mask slipping. "Something funny." "Yeah," I said, voice steady, louder than I intended. "Me, I'm the joke, believing this story 12 times in a row." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. I could feel the shock ripple across the table, the discomfort prickling in the air. Some people looked at their phones, pretending to check emails. Others studied Nathaniel as if he had suddenly grown more interesting. Elliot blinked, his lips twitching as if he wanted to scold me but couldn't find the words. I held his gaze for 3 long seconds, then leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. My pulse raced, but I didn't flinch. That was the moment. Not when I got passed over. Not when Nathaniel smiled like he had earned something he didn't. That laugh, that was the crack in the dam. When the meeting finally ended, I didn't join the crowd around Nathaniel. I slipped out quietly, my heels clicking against the polished floor. My reflection flashed in the glass wall, sharp blazer, dark hair pulled tight, eyes that looked both furious and strangely alive. For the first time in years, I didn't look tired. I looked dangerous. Back at my desk, I opened my laptop. The cursor blinked in an empty email draft, a tiny pulse of light daring me to speak. I had nothing to say. For once, I didn't want to explain or justify. I just sat there, watching the office buzz around me like a hive that no longer needed my honey. That evening, I didn't head straight home. I walked the city streets, letting the cold air sting my cheeks. Tall glass towers loomed above, their windows glowing with the same sterile light as the office I had just left. People rushed by in suits, clutching takeout containers, earbuds jammed in, their faces drawn. I wondered how many of them were living the same story. How many had given everything to companies that would never see them. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone buzzed with messages. Colleagues pretending to check in but really fishing for gossip. I ignored them. I dropped onto the couch, kicked off my shoes, and dialed my sister. Amelie answered on the second ring. "Brielle, you sound off." "They did it again," I said flatly. She didn't need me to explain. She knew the history. The 12 times, the endless excuses. She was silent for a moment, then sighed. "I'm sorry. I don't understand what's wrong with me," I admitted. "I built their systems. I rescued their biggest accounts. I work 60-hour weeks. What else do I have to do?" Her voice sharpened. Nothing, that's the point. There's no equation you haven't solved. The system is rigged. Tears burned at the back of my eyes. I swallowed them down. I can't just quit. 6 years, Amelie, 6 years. That's sunk cost fallacy, she said instantly, as if she had been waiting to drop the term. I'm serious. So am I? You're throwing good years after bad ones. You don't owe them another second. It's not that simple. The market is tight. She cut me off. I didn't say find another job. I said quit giving them your best. Quit believing their approval is worth chasing. Her words landed like a slap. I sat there, stunned, staring at the blank wall of my apartment. She was right. God, she was right. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing my laugh echo in that glass room over and over. It didn't sound broken anymore. It sounded like a beginning. The apartment was too quiet. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed louder than usual, filling the space between Amelie's words and my own ragged breathing. I stretched out on the couch, staring at the ceiling fan that had stopped working last summer. I kept telling myself I'd fix it, just like I kept telling myself Ardent would finally see me. Both lies had become part of the furniture. Sleep didn't come. Instead, memories paraded through my mind like cruel little films. The time I stayed up 48 hours straight to deliver a client presentation because the project manager quit last minute. The time I patched a broken system over a holiday weekend while Elliot posted vacation selfies from Greece. The time a client's CIO told me directly, "You're the only reason we stayed with Ardent." I should have felt proud. Instead, I felt used. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Nathaniel. "No hard feelings, right? Hope you'll show me the ropes." I threw the phone face down on the coffee table. My laugh from the meeting echoed again, except this time it felt almost like a roar inside me. Around 2 a.m., I found myself sitting on the bathroom floor, knees pulled to my chest. I wasn't crying, not exactly. The tears had dried hours ago. What came instead was a hollow ache, a numbness that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff with nothing behind me. "Quit," Amelie's voice whispered in my head. Not leave tomorrow, not storm out with a dramatic speech. Just quit giving them my fire. Quit playing a rigged game. By 3 a.m., a strange clarity spread through me. For 6 years, I had lived in reaction mode, fixing, rescuing, proving. Maybe it was time to stop reacting. Maybe it was time to act. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and pulled out a notebook. Not a work notebook, not one Ardent owned. This one was mine, its cover worn, pages filled with half-finished ideas. At the top of a fresh page, I wrote a single sentence. 6 months. 6 months to prepare. 6 months to gather every scrap of knowledge I had built for them. 6 months to map exactly how much they depended on me. 6 months to figure out who I was without them. The number wasn't random. It was long enough to give me cover, short enough to keep the urgency sharp. 6 months would carry me through another promotion cycle, another parade of empty promises, another round of watching someone else reap what I had sown. Only this time, I wouldn't be waiting. I'd be building an escape hatch. I closed the notebook, pressed my hand against the cover like sealing a pact with myself. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about impressing Elliot or earning Ardent's recognition. I was thinking about survival, about freedom. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, as usual. The difference was invisible to everyone else. My blazer was still sharp, my hair still tied neatly, my laptop still booted before the rest of the floor filled in. But something inside me had shifted. When Elliot passed me in the hall, offering his half-smile, I returned it. When Nathaniel waved his new business cards around, I nodded politely. I answered emails, joined calls, and solved problems, same as ever. But my mind was already elsewhere, cataloging every detail, every dependency, every weakness in the armor of the place I had once called home. It was a strange kind of liberation. For 6 years, I had been the eager one, desperate to prove my worth. Now, for the first time, I wasn't chasing anything. I was watching, recording, preparing. I started with the basics. Every shortcut I had built into the reporting systems, every workaround no one else understood. Every client who called me directly instead of the official support line. I kept it all in a private digital notebook, encrypted and hidden. My notebook, my rules. At night, when the office was dark and silent, I stayed late, not for them anymore, but for me. I wasn't chasing their approval. I was charting my own map. It felt cold at first, calculating, almost like betrayal. But then I remembered Elliot's smile in that meeting, the applause for Nathaniel, the hollow words I had swallowed a dozen times. If loyalty meant sacrificing myself to a system designed to ignore me, then loyalty was just another word for prison. By the end of that first week, I no longer felt broken. I felt dangerous. And here's the part I didn't fully realize then, but maybe some small part of me already knew. I wasn't just planning to leave. I was planning to build. Something new, something that was mine. But I'll come back to that later. For now, just know this. The moment I laughed in that conference room was the moment the story shifted. That laugh wasn't madness. It was awakening. The Monday after that infamous meeting, the office smelled like burnt toast from the kitchen downstairs. People clustered around Nathaniel's desk, pretending to admire his new business cards as if the ink itself carried magic. The way they fawned over him reminded me of school kids circling the new toy no one else was allowed to touch. I walked past them, coffee in hand, the steam curling into my face like a veil. I smiled just enough to appear polite but not enough to be mistaken for approval. Inside, I felt hollow. Not broken anymore, just emptied out, like someone had scraped me clean and left a blank slate. It didn't take long for the gossip to spread about my laugh in the meeting. Colleagues looked at me differently now, some with curiosity, some with suspicion, some with pity. A few avoided eye contact altogether as if my outburst might be contagious. I let them whisper, let them wonder. For 6 years, I had played the role of the reliable one, the quiet achiever who could be counted on to fix any mess without complaint. If my laugh shattered that illusion, then good. Illusions deserve to break. That evening, I called Amelia again. She answered with her usual brisk tone. "How, work?" "Predictable," I said, swirling a glass of water in my hand. "Nathaniel's already delegating half his tasks to me. People are still talking about the laugh." "And how do you feel?" I paused. How did I feel? I stared at the ceiling again, the cracks spiderwebbing out from the corner like veins. Strangely calm, like I finally stopped treading water. "That's what happens when you realize the pool was rigged," she said. Her words burrowed under my skin. Rigged? That was the truth, wasn't it? I had spent years thinking there was some secret formula to unlock, some missing charm I didn't possess. But there was no formula. The decisions were made over golf games and alumni dinners, in whispered jokes I wasn't invited to hear. The next morning, I began my quiet project. I opened a blank spreadsheet, hidden deep in a folder I named Invoices 2016. No one at Ardent would ever open that. At the top, I wrote Indispensability Map. It started small. Notes about which clients preferred my direct line, which processes I had automated behind the scenes, which deliverables technically carried someone else's name but were really mine. Each entry was a reminder that the company leaned on me far more than it admitted. Every day, I added more. By the end of the first month, the file had grown into a labyrinth of dependencies. If you pulled me out, half the threads in the web would unravel. Strangely, documenting all of it didn't make me feel used. It made me feel powerful. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was observing, calculating, preparing. Of course, I didn't let anyone see. On the surface, I was still Brielle the problem solver, the one who answered frantic 11 p.m. calls, the one who stayed late to clean up someone else's disaster. But inside, I was Brielle the strategist, building my way out, one entry at a time. It wasn't easy. Some nights I wanted to give up, to sink back into the comfort of routine. The thought of starting over terrified me. I had a steady paycheck, health insurance, a rhythm. Why risk it? Then I would remember the look on Elliot's face when he announced Nathaniel's promotion. That smirk. That certainty that I would swallow the disappointment like always. That memory fueled me more than coffee ever could. I didn't tell anyone at work what I was doing. But the loneliness pressed on me, so I confided in Amelie more often. She never coddled me. She spoke in theories and analogies, turning my pain into lessons. "You're acting like a rational agent now," she told me once. "You're maximizing your own utility instead of the company. Do you ever get tired of analyzing my life like an economic model?" I asked. She chuckled. "Only when you resist the conclusions." And the conclusion was clear. I couldn't keep pouring myself into Ardent and expecting something different. By the second month, the fractures were everywhere. I noticed how Elliot took credit for my solutions in meetings. I noticed how projects collapsed without my touch, only for me to swoop in and patch them. I noticed how little recognition came back my way. I stopped expecting it. That was the key. When Nathaniel stumbled in front of a client, I didn't flinch when Elliot threw me under the bus to cover him. When leadership lunches came and went without my invitation, I didn't feel the sting anymore. I wasn't playing their game. I was building my own. But here's the thing no one tells you. Detachment feels a lot like power. And once you taste it, it's addictive. There's something strange about walking into the same office every day while secretly planning your exit. The desks, the chairs, the elevator chimes, they all look the same, but they don't feel the same. It's like you're already a ghost, haunting a place that hasn't realized you're gone yet. I'd sit in meetings and watch people bicker over deadlines, budgets, PowerPoint slides. Before, I would have jumped in, smoothed things over, fixed the mess. Now, I simply watched. I still did the work, still delivered, but I no longer felt tethered. Their chaos wasn't mine anymore. And because I wasn't desperate for approval, people started coming to me even more. Funny, isn't it? The moment you stop chasing validation is the moment others start chasing you. Clients called me directly. Junior consultants hovered by my desk for advice. Even managers slipped into my inbox with questions they should have known the answers to. I wrote everything down. Every dependency, every rescue. My indispensability map grew thicker by the day. I started color-coding it, red for processes only I understood, blue for clients who preferred me personally, green for deliverables that technically belonged to someone else but lived and died by my corrections. By month 2, the spreadsheet looked like a war map, with my fingerprints all over the battlefield. Some nights, I stared at it until my eyes blurred. It was evidence. Proof that I hadn't been paranoid. Proof that I wasn't just another cog. Proof that without me, Ardent was held together by paper clips and luck. One night, around midnight, I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. The office was dark except for the glow of my screen. A thought whispered through me, soft but electrifying. They need me more than I need them. The words lit something inside me. For 6 years, I had begged them to recognize my worth. But now, the truth was undeniable. I was the value. They just hadn't realized how fragile their illusion of control was. The next morning, Elliot stopped by my desk, his coffee cup balanced in one hand. "Great work yesterday, Brielle," he said, too casually. "Nathaniel really appreciates your support." Support. That word stung, though less than it used to. Support implied I was a shadow, an assistant propping up someone else's spotlight. I smiled anyway. Happy to help. Inside, I was writing it down in my mental ledger. Another instance of invisibility, another reminder of why I was leaving. Around month 3, the pressure doubled. 2 major clients hit crisis mode simultaneously, and both demanded my attention. I spent 70 hours that week untangling problems I hadn't created. At one point, Nathaniel called me past midnight, his voice panicked, begging me to fix a dashboard he didn't understand. I fixed it. Of course I did. But when I hung up, I stared at my reflection in the dark window and whispered, "Not for you, for me." Because every late night, every solved disaster, every phone call from a desperate manager was more evidence for my map. More threads tying Ardent survival to me, not to the titles they handed out like party favors. It was exhausting, yes, but it was also liberating. I wasn't trapped anymore. I was stockpiling ammunition. I didn't tell anyone, not my colleagues, not my friends. Only Amelie knew, and even with her, I kept it vague. She didn't need details, she only needed to remind me why. "You're shifting the balance of power," she said during one call. "They think they own your labor, but you're reclaiming it." "Sometimes it feels like I'm playing with fire," I admitted. "Sometimes fire is the only way to clear the field," she replied. Her confidence steadied me. By month 4, I noticed something even more interesting. The more detached I became, the calmer I was in situations that used to unravel me. Elliot could take credit for my idea in front of a client, and I barely blinked. Leadership could exclude me from another lunch, and I didn't care. Each slight was another notch in the story I was writing for myself. That's when I started thinking bigger. The notebook wasn't just an exit plan. It was a blueprint. For what, I didn't know yet. But the thought wouldn't leave me. Late at night, when the office was empty, I would whisper the words under my breath. 6 months. 6 months and everything changes. And though I hadn't said it out loud yet, a quiet truth pulsed beneath it, steady and relentless. I wasn't just planning to leave, I was planning to build. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that doesn't live in your muscles but in your bones. By month 4, that was where I lived. My body kept moving, kept typing, kept answering calls, but my spirit existed somewhere else. I had begun dividing my life into 2 versions of myself. In the daylight hours, I was the same old Brielle Powell, dependable, sharp, always available. My calendar stayed crammed, my inbox screamed, my colleagues leaned on me so hard I sometimes wondered how they managed to stand when I wasn't around. Clients sent praise that mysteriously disappeared from official reports. Elliot smiled his plastic smile, Nathaniel strutted through the halls with his brand new title, and I played my part. But at night, that was when the mask slipped. The moment I turned the key in my apartment door, dropped my bag, and kicked off my shoes, the transformation began. The little one-bedroom I had once considered suffocating suddenly became my laboratory. My desk lamp, crooked from years of overuse, cast a golden circle of light across piles of sticky notes. My old laptop hummed like a co-conspirator. Coffee cups crowded the table. And me, I sat cross-legged on the floor, scribbling, calculating, typing until my eyes blurred. At first, it was just small things, a list of what I'd need if I ever did go out on my own. A tally of expenses, wildly inaccurate, scrawled in the margins of an old notebook. A half-formed idea for a company name that I couldn't stop rolling around in my mouth. Lumina. The word clung to me like a secret melody. Light, clarity, a reminder that I was done living in the shadows of other people's promotions. One night at 2 a.m, I did it. I bought the domain name. LuminaPartners.com, $30 on my credit card, confirmation email blinking in my inbox. It felt ridiculous, absurd even, but also electrifying. My heart raced as if I'd just committed a crime. I shut the laptop, sat back, and laughed. Not the bitter laugh from the conference room. This was different. Quiet, shaky, filled with disbelief. I had just planted a seed no one else knew about. After that, it snowballed. The next week, I filled out the paperwork to register a business. I didn't submit it right away. The thought alone made me sweat, but the form sat saved on my desktop, waiting. Then came a spreadsheet, this time not of Ardent's dependencies, but of my own future, projected income, expenses, potential client targets. I color-coded it like a mad scientist. Green, possibles. Clients who had dropped hints about leaving Ardent. Yellow, long shots. Companies I had contacts in but no solid ground yet. Red, never. Those tied too closely to Ardent's leadership to ever consider me. The act of categorizing made it real. Still, fear gnawed at me. Every time I typed Lumina Partners into a document, I half expected someone from Ardent to materialize at my door and accuse me of betrayal. I cleared my browser history compulsively. I hid receipts. I saved files with boring names like 2019 tax drafts, PDF just in case anyone snooped. During the day, the fear made me sharper. I kept my head down, did my work, smiled when expected. But inside, I buzzed with adrenaline. It was like living a secret romance, except the affair wasn't with a person. It was with possibility. The first time I mentioned it out loud, even in the smallest way, was to Amelie. We were on the phone late one night, me curled on my couch, her voice crackling through the line. What if I didn't just quit? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. What if I built something else? There was silence, then the sound of her sharp inhale. You mean your own firm? Maybe, I said quickly. It's stupid, I know, I'd never pull it off. Why not? She asked, her tone suddenly fierce. You've been running Ardent's operations in everything but name. What's stopping you? Fear, I wanted to say. Self-doubt, the comfort of a steady paycheck, the crushing weight of responsibility. Instead, I murmured, nothing, I guess. That was enough for her. Then do it. Don't just leave, Brielle, build. The word rattled through me like an earthquake. Build. That night, I sat at my desk until dawn. By the time the sun rose, I had sketched a rough outline of Lumina Partners. Mission, vision, services. It was messy, naive, more dream than plan, but it existed. The secret was out now, at least between me and myself. I wasn't just leaving Ardent. I was planting the first stones of something new. And here's the part no one in that office knew. I had already begun reaching out, carefully, cautiously, disguised as casual coffee chats. A message to an old colleague who had moved to another firm. A lunch with a former client contact, couched in nostalgia. I never pitched, never sold, just listened. Took notes. Watched their eyes light up when they talked about what was missing. One of them, a manager from a hospital chain, leaned close and whispered, If you ever go independent, Brielle, call me first. I smiled politely, but inside my whole body screamed. Lumina was no longer just a word. It was an inevitability. Once the idea of Lumina was out of my head and onto paper, it wouldn't leave me alone. It followed me everywhere. On the subway, I scribbled notes on my phone, potential service packages, pricing models, names of junior analysts who deserved better. In client meetings, while pretending to take notes on action items, I jotted down patterns. Who was frustrated, who was restless, who might be open to change. By the middle of month 5, I crossed a threshold. I submitted the paperwork. Lumina Partners officially existed, at least on paper. A legal entity. My entity. The email confirmation landed in my inbox while I was on a conference call about quarterly revenue. The irony almost made me laugh out loud. Elliot was droning on about value add, while I sat there grinning at my screen, knowing my future was no longer tethered to his voice. That weekend, I celebrated alone. A cheap bottle of champagne, a takeout pizza, the company of my laptop. I clicked through the blank pages of my new company registration like flipping through a photo album of a baby no one else knew I'd given birth to. It was mine. Fragile, tiny, but real. With Lumina's existence sealed, my perspective shifted. I wasn't just gathering evidence anymore. I was building infrastructure. I created a private cloud folder, filling it with templates I had designed over the years, stripped of Ardent's branding. Slide decks, checklists, frameworks, all the intellectual scaffolding that had carried their projects but never carried my name. I didn't steal anything. I didn't have to. These were tools I had built from scratch, late at night, unpaid, just to keep projects afloat. They were Ardent. They were mine. One evening, I sat staring at my indispensability map. It looked more like a constellation than a spreadsheet now, threads of dependency glowing across the page. And a thought hit me like a punch. What if Lumina didn't just survive? What if it thrived because of what I already knew? The possibility was intoxicating. I tested the waters. Carefully. Too carefully, maybe, but I couldn't afford a mistake. The first test came with a call from Lorraine, the CIO of a major hospital group. She had worked with me for years, often bypassing official channels to reach me directly. That evening, after solving yet another of her team's problems, she sighed into the phone. "Brielle, I don't know how you do it. Honestly, if you weren't at Ardent, we'd have dropped them ages ago." The silence stretched. My heart pounded. My mouth was dry. I wanted to scream, what if I wasn't at Ardent? What if I was somewhere else? But I didn't. Instead, I simply said, "That means a lot. Thank you." Her words, though, lingered. If I wasn't at Ardent, they'd have dropped them. What did that mean for Lumina? The second test came at a conference where I bumped into Victor, a former client who had moved to a different organization. Over coffee, we traded stories. When I hinted vaguely, cautiously, that I might not stay at Ardent forever, his eyebrows shot up. "If you ever land somewhere new, Brielle, call me," he said. "I'd trust you over any brand name on a slide deck." I kept my face neutral, but my pulse spiked. Piece by piece, the scaffolding for Lumina was building itself. Clients who already trusted me, colleagues who whispered about leaving Ardent, tools I had crafted with my own hands. It was like standing in the middle of a construction site and realizing the building had already begun without me. But here's the part that surprised me most. The fear started to fade. In its place grew something else, thrill. I woke up buzzing. I walked into Ardent's office like a spy with a secret mission. Meetings became theater. Elliot's patronizing pep talks became background noise. I wasn't trapped anymore. I was undercover. Still, I had to be careful. One wrong move and everything could collapse before it began, so I practiced patience, even as my heart raced with anticipation. By the end of the 5th month, my plan was no longer just an idea. It was a machine humming quietly beneath the surface. Lumina Partners existed. It had a name, a registration, a skeleton of services, and most importantly, a list of people who wanted me more than they wanted Ardent. And though I never said it out loud, not even to Amelie, a dangerous thought began to take shape. I wasn't planning to leave Ardent quietly. I was planning to leave with gravity. I was planning to pull. When the day came, and it was coming soon, I wouldn't just walk out the door. I would take the light with me. 6 months to the day. I had repeated those words to myself so many times that by the time the date actually arrived, they sounded more like prophecy than plan. I woke before dawn, long before the alarm. My apartment was still dark, the city outside barely stirring. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the neat stack of papers on my dresser, my resignation letter, folded into an envelope perfectly creased. It felt heavier than it should, as if those few sheets of paper carried the weight of 6 years. In a way, they did. I showered, dressed, straightened my blazer. I moved like an actor preparing for a scene, every gesture deliberate, rehearsed. When I tied my hair back, my hands were steady. When I painted a thin line of eyeliner, my reflection stared back at me with something sharp in her eyes. Not fear, not even anger, determination. On the subway, I stood gripping the rail as the car rattled and swayed. Commuters scrolled their phones, headphones jammed in, faces blank with routine. I wondered if anyone else in that car was about to flip their entire life upside down. Probably not. Maybe that made me reckless. Maybe it made me alive. The lobby of Ardent Global Consulting was the same as always. Polished marble floors, giant screens looping slogans about innovation and illumination. The faint hum of forced air conditioning. For 6 years, that lobby had felt like the gateway to something I craved: success, recognition, belonging. This morning, it felt like the front gate of a prison I was about to walk out of. I rode the elevator up to the 18th floor, the numbers lighting up one by one. With every floor, my chest loosened. By the time the doors opened, I was smiling. I didn't go to my desk right away. I walked straight down the hall to Elliot's office. His door was half open. He was on a call, gesturing with one hand, his voice dripping with that salesman charm he wore like cologne. He saw me hovering and waved me in, mouthing just a second. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and placed the envelope on his desk. When he finally ended the call, he leaned back in his chair, grinning. "What's this?" "My resignation," I said. My voice was calm, almost cheerful. For a second, he laughed like I had told a joke. Then he saw my face. His grin faltered. "You're serious?" 2 weeks' notice, I said. "It's all in the letter." He picked up the envelope as if it might bite him. His eyes darted across the words, his brow furrowed. "Brielle, this is sudden. Is this about Nathaniel's promotion? Because if it is, I want you to know I've been pushing your name for—" "No," I cut him off. "This isn't about Nathaniel, and it isn't about what you've been pushing. This isn't a negotiation. I'm leaving." His eyes narrowed. "You realize the timing is impossible. You're leading Meridian Health. Lorraine at Central Hospital calls you directly. We're in the middle of Q2 rollouts. You can't just walk away." I smiled. "Watch me." That was the first time I saw it, real panic flickering in his expression. He covered it quickly, leaning back in his chair, trying to regain his composure. "You won't last 6 months out there, Brielle. You've had stability here, security. Out there, it's brutal." I let the words wash over me, meaningless noise. "Thank you for your concern," I said smoothly, "but I'll take my chances." I stood, turned, and walked out. I didn't give him the satisfaction of watching me hesitate. Back at my desk, I logged into my laptop like it was any other day. Around me, the office hummed with its usual rhythm. Phones ringing, keyboards clacking, someone laughing too loudly near the kitchenette. But I felt a shift in the air. News spreads fast in places like Ardent. By mid-morning, people were already whispering. Colleagues lingered at the edge of my cubicle, pretending to ask work questions but really fishing for confirmation. "Is it true?" One of the analysts whispered, eyes wide. I shrugged. "Depends on what you heard." By lunchtime, the rumors were wildfire. Some said I'd been poached by a competitor. Others speculated I was going back to school or moving abroad. I let them wonder. The truth was mine alone, at least for now. Elliot avoided me the rest of the day, but I saw him pacing in his office through the glass walls, phone pressed to his ear, his gestures sharp. At one point, Vernon, the CEO, appeared on our floor, a rare event that made everyone sit up straighter. He walked straight into Elliot's office and closed the door. I couldn't hear what was said, but I didn't need to. I saw Elliot's face, pale and tight. I saw Vernon's jaw clench. I saw the way they both looked out at me once, then quickly looked away. That was when it hit me with full force. The power had shifted. For 6 years, I had begged for scraps of recognition. Now, suddenly, they were the ones scrambling. That evening, I left the office as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the glass towers of the city. The air was warm, alive with traffic and voices. I walked slower than usual, savoring it. For the first time in years, the weight wasn't on my shoulders. It was on theirs, and this was only the beginning. The next morning, the floor felt different. People kept glancing at me as if I had grown horns overnight. Some avoided eye contact altogether, afraid that speaking to me might brand them as traitors by association. Others lingered too long at my desk, lowering their voices like conspirators. By 10 a.m., Elliot summoned me to another conversation. He was flanked this time by Vernon, the CEO himself. They sat across from me in the glass-walled conference room, sunlight cutting sharp lines across the table. "Brielle," Vernon began, voice grave, "we've been discussing your value to the company. It's clear you are indispensable." I almost laughed at that word, indispensable. It had taken them 6 years and my resignation letter to discover it. "We'd like to offer you the senior consultant role, effective immediately," he continued, "along with a 15% raise." I folded my hands neatly. "I appreciate the offer, but I've already made my decision." They blinked at me, stunned. Elliot jumped in, his smile strained. "Of course, we understand emotions are high. Perhaps you need time to reconsider. We can discuss." "No," I said firmly. "This isn't about emotions, it's about respect, and I'm done waiting for it." The silence that followed was thick, heavy. Vernon finally sighed, nodding slowly, though his eyes flashed with something that looked a lot like fear. When I left that room, I felt strangely light. They had finally dangled the carrot, and I had walked right past it. But Ardent wasn't finished. Not even close. By day 3 of my notice period, the panic had become visible. Emails flew at me with subject lines like urgent, Need clarification and critical issue, please advise. Projects began to stutter, deadlines slipped. Clients who normally heard from the company were calling me directly, alarm in their voices when I hinted I wouldn't be around much longer. Elliot scheduled daily knowledge transfer meetings, frantic sessions where junior staff scribbled notes as I explained processes they should have learned years ago. He asked me to draft training manuals, to record walkthrough videos. I smiled sweetly. Of course, my consulting rate outside of Ardent is $275 an hour. His face turned crimson. You work here? For 11 more days, I corrected. Word spread fast about that exchange. By lunch, analysts were whispering about it in the cafeteria, half in awe, half in disbelief. I pretended not to notice, but inside I was glowing. For the first time, I wasn't the one being toyed with. By the end of the first week, Ardent's leadership caved further. They made a second offer. Senior manager, skipping a level entirely, with a 30% raise and a seat at the leadership table. I declined again. You're being unreasonable, Elliot snapped, the mask gone now. We're trying to make this right. 6 years, I replied evenly. You had 6 years to make it right. He flinched as if I'd struck him. Projects crumbled faster after that. Meridian Health stalled completely when no one could decipher the custom dashboard I had built. Lorraine from Central Hospital called Vernon directly, furious, threatening to reconsider the contract. I knew because one of Vernon's assistants whispered it to me in the elevator. By day 10, Vernon himself came to my desk. His suit was immaculate as always, but his eyes were bloodshot, his smile brittle. He leaned close, lowering his voice so others couldn't hear. Name your price, he said quietly. Director level, equity stake, work from home, whatever it takes. For a split second, I wavered. Director, equity. The kind of power I had dreamed of for years. The kind of recognition that once would have made me fall to my knees in gratitude. But then I remembered 12 rejections. 12 times being told I wasn't enough. 12 times watching someone else's name highlighted in that damn folder. I smiled gently. I'm sorry, Vernon, my mind is made up. The look on his face, desperation giving way to disbelief, was something I will never forget. On my final day, I packed my desk into a single cardboard box. A plant, a few mugs, some pens I probably didn't own. People hovered awkwardly, unsure whether to hug me, congratulate me, or avoid me altogether. Nathaniel didn't meet my eyes. In the lobby, Elliot stopped me one last time. His voice was low, venom wrapped in false concern. You're making a mistake, he said. You won't last 6 months. I shifted the box in my arms, looked him squarely in the eyes, and smiled. Watch me. Then I walked out. The doors closed behind me with a hiss. The sound was final, like a lock clicking shut. And here's the part that still makes my pulse race when I think about it. I didn't feel fear, not regret. Relief, pure and sharp, like stepping into sunlight after years underground. What I didn't know yet, what none of them knew, was that my 2 weeks of quiet chaos had only been the opening act. The real story was about to begin. Because Lumina Partners was no longer just an idea. It was waiting in the wings. The morning after I left Ardent, I woke with sunlight streaming through my blinds. For the first time in 6 years, there was no alarm screaming at me, no client call waiting, no looming deadline etched into my calendar. My phone buzzed only once, Amelie, sending me a string of celebratory emojis, and then fell silent. The silence was deafening. I sat up slowly, stretching, letting the quiet settle around me. No rush-hour commute. No frantic email check. Just me and the hollow knowledge that I had done it, I had burned the bridge, and there was no going back. It felt both exhilarating and terrifying. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and opened my laptop. On the screen was Lumina Partners, registration page, the barebones website I had cobbled together late at night. A single page with a placeholder logo, a tagline I had rewritten a dozen times, clarity, strategy, light for the road ahead. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The first few days blurred together in a haze of lists. Business bank account, invoicing software, health insurance, a proper email signature. Things I had never had to think about at Ardent, where entire departments existed to handle them. Now, every responsibility fell squarely on my shoulders. I worked from my living room, surrounded by stacks of papers and half-empty coffee cups. Some days I felt unstoppable, conquering one task after another. Other days, the weight of it crushed me. I'd stare at the screen, paralyzed by the enormity of it all. Doubt whispered constantly. What if Elliot was right? What if you don't last 6 months? But then I'd remember Lorraine's voice, Victor's promise, the looks of desperation on Vernon's face, and I would push forward. The breakthrough came in week 3. An email landed in my inbox from Lorraine herself. Short, to the point, Are you available for a private consultation? We need someone we can trust, someone like you. My hands shook as I typed my reply. We set a meeting at a downtown cafe. I arrived early, nerves buzzing, laptop in my bag like a talisman. Lorraine swept in, all business, her assistant trailing behind with a tablet. We ordered coffees, exchanged pleasantries, and then she cut to the chase. Ardent's team is a mess without you, she said bluntly. They've missed 2 deadlines. I don't have time for excuses. I need results. I swallowed hard. I'm on my own now. My firm is small. Just me at the moment? Lorraine leaned back unimpressed. I don't care how many people you have. I care about outcomes. Can you deliver? The words rang in my ears. Outcomes. That was all that had ever mattered, wasn't it? Not titles, not promotions, not politics, just results. I nodded. Yes, I can. That night, I sent my first official Lumina invoice. It was modest, almost laughably so compared to Ardent's bloated rates. But when Lorraine approved it without hesitation, I nearly cried. Lumina Partners had its first client. The weeks that followed were brutal. Without Ardent's infrastructure, I worked 16-hour days, doing everything from data analysis to presentation design to IT troubleshooting. There was no buffer, no one to delegate to, no junior analyst to fetch numbers. Every mistake was mine alone. But there was freedom, too. Every decision was mine. Every success was mine. For the first time, I wasn't polishing someone else's name. I was building my own. Word spread quietly. Victor reached out next, offering a pilot project at his new organization. Then a former colleague messaged me on LinkedIn, curious about opportunities. Slowly, Lumina's name, my name, began to circulate. By the end of the 3rd month, I had 3 clients. Not much by Ardent standards, but enough to pay rent, cover expenses, and keep the lights on. Enough to prove that Elliot had been wrong. And here's the part that thrilled me most. Every time I introduced myself now, I didn't have to say Brielle Powell from Ardent Global Consulting. I could simply say, I'm Brielle Powell, founder of Lumina Partners. The words tasted like freedom. By the time month 4 rolled around, Lumina had transformed from a fragile dream into something with shape and momentum. My tiny living room no longer looked like a consulting war room. It looked like a startup. Whiteboards leaned against the wall, covered in scribbles of project timelines. Sticky notes crawled across every surface. My dining table had become a graveyard of empty coffee cups and highlighters, but the chaos was mine, every scrap of it. The first 3 clients kept me alive, but the workload nearly killed me. I was analyst, strategist, designer, accountant, marketer, every role compressed into one overworked human being. Sleep became optional. Meals consisted of protein bars and lukewarm coffee. I knew it couldn't last. If Lumina was to grow, I needed help. The problem was trust. Who could I bring in without risking everything? Ardent still loomed in my rearview mirror, a shadow that hadn't yet caught up but surely would. If the wrong person leaked word of what I was building, Elliot and Vernon would crush me before I could take root. Then one night, around midnight, Amelie messaged me. Need an extra pair of hands. I stared at the screen, hesitant. She had been my sounding board, my friend, my confidant, but bringing her into Lumina was another leap of faith. It's crazy hours, I warned her. Low pay, no benefits yet, it's a gamble. Her reply came instantly. I'm in, I believe in you. And just like that, Lumina wasn't a solo act anymore. The relief was immediate. With Amelie handling some of the grunt work, data cleaning, scheduling, formatting reports, I could breathe again. Together, we worked out of my apartment, the 2 of us huddled over laptops, ordering cheap takeout and laughing deliriously at 3 in the morning. It felt less like work and more like rebellion. Clients noticed the difference. We delivered faster, sharper. Lorraine renewed her contract for another quarter. Victor expanded his pilot into a full engagement. And then came the email that changed everything. A mid-sized manufacturing firm, frustrated with Ardent's bloated fees and missed deadlines, reached out. They had heard my name through the grapevine. The CEO wanted to meet. I remember walking into their glass-walled office, palms sweating, heart hammering. For the first time, I wasn't just selling myself, I was selling Lumina. The meeting was brutal. Questions about scalability, sustainability, risk. At one point, the CFO leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Why should we trust you, a 2-person firm, over a giant like Ardent? I took a breath, steadying my voice. Because Ardent is a machine, and like any machine, it breaks. We're not a machine, we're human, we listen, we adapt, we care. You won't be another line on a quarterly report, you'll be our priority. The room was silent. Then the CEO smiled. Let's give her a shot. When they signed the contract a week later, I cried, not quiet tears. Full-body sobs, curled on the couch while Amelie cheered and popped a cheap bottle of champagne. It was more than just money, though the paycheck was the biggest Lumina had ever seen. It was validation, proof that we could compete, that clients wanted us over the giants. But victories have a way of drawing attention. 2 weeks after we started the project, I received an unexpected email from a former colleague still at Ardent. Just one line, "They're asking questions about you." My stomach dropped. I had known it would happen eventually. Lumina wasn't invisible anymore. My name was circulating, contracts were shifting, whispers were spreading, and Ardent, bleeding from the cracks I'd left behind, had finally noticed where the clients were going. I closed my laptop, staring into the darkened room. For the first time since leaving, fear crept back in, but it wasn't the paralyzing fear of before. This was different. Sharper, more like anticipation. Because if Ardent wanted a fight, I was ready. Lumina wasn't just surviving anymore. Lumina was growing, and I wasn't going back. The first sign that Ardent was circling came quietly. A letter, heavy cream paper with the company's logo embossed at the top, slid under my apartment door one Wednesday morning. It wasn't a thank you. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a cease and desist. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee forgotten, eyes racing over the words. Allegations of unlawful competition. Claims that I had breached non-compete obligations. Demands to immediately cease operations under Lumina Partners. Threats of legal action if I failed to comply. My chest tightened. My fingers shook as I flipped through the pages. Ardent's legal department had always been ruthless. This wasn't a warning. It was a shot across the bow. When Amelie arrived later that morning, balancing croissants in a paper bag, she froze at the sight of the letter on the table. "They're coming after you," she whispered. "They're trying to scare me," I said, though my voice betrayed me. Her eyes narrowed. "Are you scared?" I took a deep breath. "Terrified, but I'm not stopping." That afternoon, I called a lawyer, an old friend of my brother's, someone who had handled startup disputes before. He scanned the letter, adjusted his glasses, and looked up at me. "Half of this is bluster," he said. "They're hoping you'll fold. You didn't steal data, you didn't sign a non-compete with teeth. You're clean. But make no mistake, they'll drag this out to drain you." "Can they kill Lumina?" I asked. He leaned back. "Only if you let them." I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the letter on my nightstand like a predator watching me breathe. But morning came, and with it clarity. I had spent years building Ardent's empire for them, invisible and undervalued. Now they wanted to snuff me out the second I dared to step into the light. No, if they wanted a fight, I would fight. Pressure mounted quickly. Within days, 2 potential clients pulled out of negotiations, citing concerns about ongoing disputes. I didn't need to ask where those concerns came from. Ardent's shadow was long. Worse, one of my current clients, Victor's organization, received an anonymous tip that Lumina was unstable. He called me directly, concern in his voice. "Tell me the truth, Brielle, should we be worried?" I swallowed hard. "No, you shouldn't. Ardent is trying to scare us, that's all." He hesitated, then sighed. "I want to believe you, but if this blows up, my job on the line?" When the call ended, I sat in silence, my hands trembling. This was exactly what Ardent wanted. Not to beat me in court, but to choke me in whispers, in rumors, in doubt. And then came the betrayal. One Friday evening, Amelie and I were working late, laptops glowing, music playing softly in the background. My phone buzzed with a notification, a LinkedIn update. I clicked absent-mindedly and froze. Nathaniel, smiling in a photo, announcing a new strategic initiative at Ardent. And right there in the text were phrases ripped straight from Lumina's website. My website. I felt the blood drain from my face. "He stole it," I whispered. Amelie leaned over, eyes widening. "Oh my God, that's your wording." They hadn't just come after me legally. They had stolen my ideas, repackaged them, and paraded them as their own. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The rage was so sharp it blurred my vision. 6 years of being overlooked, of watching men like Nathaniel climb on my back, and now, even after I had broken free, he was still feeding on me. That night, something inside me shifted. Fear burned away, replaced by something harder. If Ardent wanted war, I would give them one. And if Nathaniel wanted to steal my light, he would learn just how blinding it could be. The Monday after Nathaniel's announcement, I walked into the cafe where Lorraine had asked to meet, carrying my laptop like a shield. She was already there, tapping her pen against the table, irritation etched into every line of her face. "Tell me this isn't true," she said without preamble. She slid her tablet across the table. On the screen was Nathaniel's smug photo, Ardent's announcement plastered over it. I clenched my jaw. It's smoke and mirrors. They're parroting ideas they stole from me. Lorraine studied me carefully, her sharp eyes narrowing. I want to believe you, but you understand how this looks, Brielle. My board is nervous. If I bet on you and Ardent sues, I could lose my job. The words cut deeper than I expected. Lorraine had been my first real client, the one who had made Lumina possible. If she walked, the loss wouldn't just be financial, it would be personal. Give me 2 weeks, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. 2 weeks to prove that Lumina can deliver what Ardent never could. If I fail, walk away, but don't let Nathaniel's lies decide for you. She hesitated. Finally, she nodded. 2 weeks. When I left the cafe, my knees nearly buckled. I leaned against the wall outside, sucking in cold air, my pulse hammering. 2 weeks. That was all the rope I had left. Back at the apartment, I told Amelie everything. She listened, arms crossed, face tense. We can do it, she said fiercely. We'll work around the clock if we have to. For the next 10 days, that's exactly what we did. We barely slept, surviving on takeout and sheer adrenaline. We rebuilt dashboards from scratch, streamlined workflows, produced reports so polished they made Ardent's glossy decks look amateur. The night before the presentation, Amelie fell asleep on the couch, laptop balanced on her knees. I covered her with a blanket and sat alone at the table, staring at the slides. My body ached, my eyes burned, but my mind was sharp. This is it, I whispered. Do or die. The presentation was a triumph. Lorraine's board nodded, asked tough questions, pressed for details. I answered everyone with calm precision. By the end, even Lorraine's skeptical CFO looked impressed. When Lorraine shook my hand afterward, her grip was firm. You've bought yourself more than 2 weeks, Brielle. You've bought my trust. Relief flooded me, so strong I nearly sagged to my knees. We had survived. But survival came at a price. 2 days later, I received a message that shattered me more than any legal threat ever could. It was from Amelie. I'm sorry, Brielle. Ardent approached me. They offered security, stability. I can't keep gambling with my future. I'm taking their offer. I read the words again and again, my vision blurring. Amelie, my anchor, my partner in late-night battles, my first believer. Gone, worse than gone. She had gone to them. I slammed my laptop shut, my chest heaving. Rage, grief, betrayal, all tangled together until I couldn't separate them. For hours, I sat in the dark, replaying every moment with her. The laughter, the sleepless nights, the champagne toast. Had it all been a lie, or had Ardent poisoned her the way they tried to poison everything? By midnight, one thought crystallized, sharp as glass. This wasn't just business anymore. Ardent had taken my credit, my ideas, my time. Now they had taken my closest ally. If they wanted war, they had it. No more playing defense. No more whispers in the dark. It was time to step fully into the light and blind them. The weeks after Amelie's departure were the hardest of my life. My apartment felt cavernous without her laughter echoing off the walls, without her laptop humming on the other side of the table. I found sticky notes she had left, reminders to double-check figures, half-finished to-do lists, and each one was like a knife. For the first time, I considered giving up. I told myself I had proved enough. I had built Lumina from nothing. I had shown Ardent that I could survive without them. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it was time to walk away, cut my losses, save what little strength I had left. But then the calls began. Clients I hadn't even pitched were reaching out. Companies burned by Ardent, companies tired of the same glossy promises and empty results. They had heard about Lumina. They had heard about me. One CFO put it bluntly on a call. If you can do for us what you did for Lorraine's group, we'll sign today. We don't care how big Ardent is, we're done with them. Every word lit a fire under me. Ardent hadn't killed Lumina. They had fueled it. Every attempt to smear me, every stolen idea, every betrayal only pushed more people to my side. By the end of the month, I had 5 active contracts. My tiny apartment could no longer contain the workload. I rented a small office downtown, nothing glamorous, just a 2-room suite with peeling paint and humming fluorescent lights. But when I taped Lumina's logo to the door, I nearly cried. This wasn't just survival anymore, it was growth. Of course, Ardent noticed. The escalation came fast. A public statement on their website claiming that certain former employees had engaged in unethical practices. They didn't name me, but everyone knew who they meant. Then came the poaching. Lorraine called me one morning, furious. Ardent's people showed up at my office yesterday, pitching Nathaniel as your replacement. They said Lumina is unstable, that you'll collapse any day. I braced for the worst, but then she surprised me. I told them to get out. Her loyalty steadied me, but I knew not every client would be so firm. And then, as if fate were staging a showdown, an invitation landed in my inbox. The annual Global Consulting Summit. A glossy event where all the big firms gathered to flaunt their successes. Ardent would be there, of course, with their giant booth and their endless marketing budget. And this year, for the first time, Lumina Partners was invited too. I stared at the email for a long time, heart pounding. It was insane. Lumina was barely a year old. We had no booth, no budget, no entourage. Just me, my laptop, and a shaky conviction. But something deep inside whispered, this is it. This is where you show them. I registered that night. The weeks leading up to the summit were a blur. I poured every ounce of energy into preparing. I polished case studies, crafted presentations, rehearsed pitches until my voice went hoarse. I couldn't match Ardent's scale, but I could match their substance. When the day came, I dressed carefully. A navy blazer, crisp white blouse, hair tied back. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Not the weary consultant, not the frantic startup founder. Someone new. Someone sharp. The convention hall was overwhelming. Bright lights, towering displays, firms handing out glossy brochures and branded tote bags. Ardent's booth loomed like a fortress, screens flashing slogans, Nathaniel's smug face plastered across banners. He was the star of their campaign now, driving innovation with ideas I had written in my own living room. For a moment, fear almost sent me running. But then I remembered Elliot's words, "You won't last 6 months." It had been 12. And I was still here, stronger. I walked past Ardent's booth, head high, as Nathaniel's eyes flicked to me. Surprise, then something darker, unease, I didn't stop. Because I hadn't come to fight on their terms, I had come to win on mine. The Global Consulting Summit buzzed with energy, the air heavy with ambition and perfume. Suits brushed against each other in crowded aisles, laughter and handshakes echoing between booths that gleamed like monuments. Everyone here was selling something. I wasn't here to sell, I was here to prove. Lumina's booth was laughable compared to the giants. Just a small table, a rented banner, and a stack of one-page brochures I had designed myself at 2 a.m. No flashing screens, no army of interns handing out swag, just me. And yet, people stopped. Maybe it was curiosity, the audacity of a new name in a hall of titans. Maybe it was the whispers, the rumors about the woman who had walked out of Ardent and lived to tell the tale. Either way, conversations started. I spoke with CEOs, project leads, analysts. I told them not what Lumina was, but what Lumina did. Clear, tailored solutions. Actual results, not glossy decks. I could see their eyes shift, curiosity sharpening into interest into trust. Then, mid-afternoon, it happened. A bell rang, calling attendees into the main hall for the keynote panel. On stage, under blinding lights, sat 4 executives from the leading firms. And in the center chair, basking in the spotlight, was Nathaniel. He was introduced as one of the brightest rising stars in consulting, his name followed by applause. He smiled, confident, polished. And when his turn came to speak, his slides appeared on the giant screen behind him. My slides, my words, rebranded in Ardent's colors, stripped of my name, but unmistakably mine. For a moment, the room blurred. Rage roared in my ears. 6 years of being invisible, and now here was Nathaniel, parading my work as his own before an audience of thousands. But then, something unexpected happened. A hand touched my arm. I turned. Lorraine stood there, eyes blazing. "Are you seeing this?" she whispered. "I'm seeing it," I said, my voice low, trembling with fury. She squeezed my arm. "Then do something." When the panel ended, applause thundered. Nathaniel basked in it, waving slightly as if he were royalty. But the universe, it seemed, had grown tired of his performance, because the moderator invited audience questions. And Lorraine, never one to waste time, shot her hand into the air. She stood, voice ringing clear. "Nathaniel, thank you for your presentation. Could you clarify when exactly Ardent developed this framework? Because as far as I recall, I saw these methods delivered to my organization last year by a different consultant. Her name is Brielle Powell." The room shifted, a murmur rippling like a wave. All eyes swung toward me. Nathaniel froze, his smile faltered. "Well, of course, innovation is collaborative." "No," Lorraine cut him off. "I'm asking a direct question. Are you claiming credit for her work?" The silence was electric. Cameras clicked. Phones recorded. I stood slowly. My heart thundered, but my voice, when it came, was steady. "Lumina Partners developed those frameworks. I did, and Ardent knows it." Gasps, whispers. Heads turning, faces wide-eyed. Nathaniel stammered, searching for words. Elliot, seated in the front row, leapt to his feet, shouting, "This is inappropriate. She doesn't even belong here." But Vernon, the CEO, remained seated, his face pale, his jaw clenched. He didn't move to stop me, he knew, and so did everyone else. In that moment, the balance shifted. Ardent wasn't the towering monolith anymore. It was a cornered giant, exposed under the lights. After the panel, people swarmed me. Some offered congratulations, others business cards. My inbox exploded that evening with inquiries, partnerships, opportunities. Lumina, once a fragile seed, had burst into bloom in the most public way possible. And Ardent, their silence in the days that followed was louder than any denial. Nathaniel's face quietly disappeared from their website. Elliot stopped posting triumphant updates. Vernon released a bland statement about restructuring. I didn't celebrate with champagne. I didn't need to. Victory wasn't a loud explosion. It was quiet, steady, undeniable. Weeks later, as I sat in Lumina's new office, bigger, brighter, filled with the chatter of a small but growing team, I thought back to Elliot's words. You won't last 6 months. It had been more than a year, and I wasn't just lasting. I was building something that would outlive all of them. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the sunlight pour across my face. For the first time in my life, I wasn't standing in someone else's shadow. I was the light.